Today's guest on the Oboe Windfree show is Cliodhna Ryan. Cliodhna is one of the violinists in the Irish Chamber Orchestra, and she grew up in the fields surrounding Dundalk, and she used to travel to Dublin every weekend for her violin lessons. Now, when Cliodhna was 17, she was awarded a place in the European Union Youth Orchestra. So what a lot of people might not realise is that most of the people in that orchestra are already studying at international conservatoires, usually in their last sort of final year or so. And Cliodhna was still at school in Ireland. So the first thing I really wanted to ask Cliodhna, what was it like being in Ireland and studying and then suddenly finding yourself in this international orchestra?
It was such an extraordinary experience. It was really a game changer for me. I had had amazing violin teachers that tried to communicate how wide this world of music was and how it encompassed history and art and all these different textures and all these different art forms and philosophies and so many things. But I hadn't really ever understood that. And there I was, you know, going to the Louis School in Dundalk and practicing so hard, working so hard and having fun at youth orchestra with my friends. But then suddenly going, we had a rehearsal period in Norway in the hills. It was Vladimir Ashkenazy was conducting. Then I also worked with Bernard Haitink, Carla Maria Giulini, Rostropovich, incredible soloists like Emanuel Ax, and just the experience of performing in the greatest halls in Europe, all over, like from Russia, the Baltic states, the Concertgebouw, Royal Albert Hall.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds absolutely incredible. And what I also wonder, all of these incredible experiences, what musical possibilities did they show you?
I think it was like that sense of connecting with like people that I had thought of as not as like more like myth. Like Shostakovich, to me, he wasn't a man, he was a myth, you know? Mm-hmm. But performing in the hall in St. Petersburg, a symphony with Rostropovich conducting, who knew Shostakovich and he used to say, when Shostakovich said this and that, and friends of Shostakovich's in the hall, and him painting the picture of soldiers coming in from the front for the premiere that Shostakovich conducted, you realised this wasn't some abstract art, this wasn't a story, this wasn't a myth, this was real people, a real man, and it connected me with all of that, and then connected me with the idea that we're just a small link in a chain of telling like a human story that stretches for centuries behind us and stretches in front of us for centuries. And we're like, you know, we're just a small piece of that, and how massive a privilege that is. So it was very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds as if your world just completely opened up
in a
really, and that's all through music. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it was great fun as well, and it was like being in countries, you know, just you get to enter more into a composer's imagination when you're connecting with them in that way. Mm-hmm. You know, traveling, going to see Bach's house, or you know, it all becomes more real, and mm-hmm. therefore you can be a better interpreter. You know. Yeah.
So the next stage of the story, in 1993. Cliodhna went to study in London. So having been playing in the European Community Youth Orchestra, she went to study at the Royal Academy of Music. And then I think you went to study in America, and then you went back to the Academy, and then you went to the Guildhall School of Music, and then you went to the Banff Centre for Performing Arts as an artist in residence in Canada. So to be honest, apart from all your travelling with the ICO, your travelling as a student sounds more like a kind of travel brochure than a musical CV. So what I wanted to ask you really, all of that time you were kind of growing up, and you were growing up away from home. And so I wondered what it was like kind of thinking about your identity as an Irish person, but spending all of that time away from Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I definitely had like, you know, I was an immigrant from when I was 19. I took a year off before I went to college, and so I was a little bit older, and I'm grateful for that actually, because you know, when I went over to London, and many of my young Irish peers at the time did the same thing, it was very far away. You know, you couldn't come home except for maybe Christmas and Easter if you were lucky. And, you know, there was a payphone down the hall that your parents might be lucky to grab you on. So you were very far away from home. There were older Irish musicians that looked after me really, really well when I first arrived in London. And yeah, there was a community, and it was that like looked after each other and nurtured each other, and understood our context, you know. And the same in Texas. Like when I went to Texas, it was just literally to really focus on practicing and work. And I had a gorgeous class of colleagues there, of classmates, and they looked after me, you know, brought me to get my duvet and my pots and pans, and you know, a lot of them were Russian, and they were so kind and generous. And then you just pass that on when the next year of people come. You make sure that you look after them. But yeah, I slept under my coat for the first few nights, and you know, it's just.
You really learned about the world and about what.
Yeah, and it's important as a musician to like throw yourself into the deep end. You know, to be a very small fish in a big pond. It's really important to challenge yourself in that way.
What I wanted to ask really, what was it like coming home back to Ireland as a kind of Irish grown-up kind of thing, and bringing back all your experiences back to your home country?
You know, well, my first kind of coming back really began with when I got the job with ICO, and then I'd come home like so many of us, to just, you know, travel home for the work and then go back to the UK. And I just got to discover my country basically for the first time as an adult in that way. Going to the, you know, driving along the Dula Famine Trail, going to Clifton, you know, Mayo, Sligo, across County Clare to Crossroads and Kerry, Inisheer, all these places I had never been and discovered. And ICO brought me to those places with music, brought me to parish halls, sports centres, beautiful little churches, gorgeous little halls tucked away down country lanes or in beautiful market towns across the country. And it was just such a pleasure and such a privilege. And I'm forever grateful for that, because I kind of discovered my country as an adult on my own terms through music, which was such a beautiful way to do it. And then coming back to live in Ireland in 2008 in the midst of a recession offered so many opportunities really, to be in a community of musicians who were so diverse in their skills, you know, people that were extraordinary Baroque musicians, contemporary musicians, classical musicians, and you know, it had more diversity. My musical life had more diversity in Ireland than it did in London, like one of the biggest cities in the world, you know. So I loved that.
Yeah, Cliodhna, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the flesh very soon.
Let's hope sooner than later, Matthew. And thank you so much, and thanks for taking the time to be so considered in your questions. I appreciate it.
Lots of love.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Matthew. Thank you.